The office was quiet, except for the soft rustling of papers as Mrs. Han went through the files on her desk. Wine and Jungkook stood before her, waiting for her to speak. The professor's face was calm, but her eyes held warmth as she looked at Wine. Wine, I must say I'm really pleased with your results. They are quite impressive, as always. Wine quickly bowed her head out of respect, a small smile forming on her lips. Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Han nodded approvingly, scanning through Wine's great sheet once again. Her eyes glowed with satisfaction before she glanced the paper down neatly on her desk. Then her gaze shifted to Chongo. The warmth in her expression faded slightly, replaced by something more serious. She picked up another sheet, Jungkook's result card, and sighed, shaking her head as she tapped her fingers against the desk. And Jungkook, you? Jungkook, who had been staring at his shoes the entire time, slowly lifted his gaze, already dreading what was coming. Mrs. Han's voice softened, but there was a firm edge to it. Your scores have not improved. They are the same as last time. Jungkook inhaled sharply and clenched his jaw, his hands burrowing deeper into his pockets. Wine didn't say anything. Jungkook, when will you start taking your studies seriously? The young man exhaled, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, still avoiding her gaze. I try, Professor, but it's just. You don't try enough. Jungkook's lips pressed into a tight line. Wine watched as his fingers curled into fists inside his pockets. Mrs. Han's expression softened as she leaned forward slightly. Jungkook, you are capable. I know you are, but you're not putting in the effort. If you continue like this, you will fall further behind. Do you want that? Jungkook's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed. He remained silent, his shoulders tense. Mrs. Han exhaled deeply, tapping the table thoughtfully before shifting her gaze to Wine. Wine straightened instinctively under her stare. Wine, you are one of my best students. You are disciplined, hardworking, and you never let distractions affect your studies. Wine blinked in surprise. Thank you, Professor. Mrs. Han offered her a small smile before her expression turned serious again. I have a request for you, Wine. Something in Mrs. Han's voice made Wine's stomach twist with nervousness. A request? Mrs. Han nodded. I want you to personally tutor Jungkook. Silence fell over the room. Wait, what? Professor, no way. His reaction was instant, his voice louder than necessary. He snapped his head toward Mrs. Han, eyes wide with disbelief. Mrs. Han remained firm, her hands clasped together on the table. Yes, wait, Jungkook, you need help, and wine is the best choice. I don't need a tutor. His voice was sharp, defensive. Mrs. Han simply raised an eyebrow, then explain your grades. Jungkook opened his mouth but quickly closed it, his jaw tightening. Wine stood frozen, trying to process what had just been happened. Her tutor Jungkook, the professor who barely paid attention in class. Professor, I don't know if that's a good idea. He might not even. Mrs. Han gave her a hopeful look. Yes, please, just try. I know you have other things to focus on, but if anyone can help Jungkook, it's you. Wine chewed on her bottom lip, glancing at Jungkook. He was still scowling at the floor, his body language screaming protest. He clearly didn't like the idea anymore than she did. After a moment of hesitation, she sighed, Okay, Professor, I will do it. Mrs. Hunt smiled in relief. Thank you, Wine. I truly appreciate it. Jungkook exhaled heavily, racking a hand through his dark hair. He looked annoyed but said nothing. Mrs. Han leaned back in her chair, satisfied. I expect you to work hard, Jungkook. Don't waste this opportunity. Jungkook scoffed under his breath but nodded reluctantly. As they walked out of the office, Wine still felt a little dazed. The moment they stepped into the hallway, she let out a breath, but before she could take another step, a strong hand suddenly wrapped around her wrist. She froze. Turning her head, she found Jungkook gripping her wrist, his fingers firm but not painful. His dark eyes bored into hers. What? Jungkook's grip loosened slightly, his dark eyes searching Wine's face as he hesitated. Are you okay with tutoring me? His voice was quieter now, softer, almost unsure. Wine blinked at the sudden change in his demeanor. Just moments ago, he seemed irritated by the idea, but now he looked almost vulnerable. He swallowed, lowering his gaze for a second before speaking again. I don't want to be a burden on you. For some reason, his words stuck at something in Wine's chest. He wasn't used to seeing Jungkook like this, uncertain, hesitant. A small, reassuring smile curled her lips. It's completely fine. I don't mind helping you. Jungkook looked at her for a moment as if trying to read her sincerity. Then he nodded. Alright, then let's set a time. When are you free? One thought for a moment. After college would be best, maybe around 5. Jungkook tilted his head, considering it before nodding. 5 works for me. And with that, the arrangement was sealed. Later that evening, 5 p.m., Wine stood outside a massive iron gate, staring up at the towering mansion before her. Her mouth parted slightly in shock. Wow, this place is huge. She had expected Jungkook's house to be nice, but this was on a completely different level. The modern architecture, the pristine garden, the sheer size of the property, it all screamed wealth. Gathering herself, she stepped forward and rang the doorbell. Within seconds, the grand wooden door swung open, revealing Jungkook dressed casually in a simple black shirt and grey sweatpants. His gaze flickered over her, a small smirk tugging at his lips. You are on time. Wine, still overwhelmed by the size of his house, nodded slowly. Yeah, should I come in? Jungkook chuckled, stepping aside. Of course, unless you prefer tutoring me from the doorstep. One shot him a look but stepped inside, her eyes immediately scanning the lavish interior. The mansion was eerily quiet, the air carrying a faint scent of vanilla and cologne. The living room was sleek with minimalistic furniture and warm lighting. But something felt empty. She glanced at Jungkook. Your house is so quiet. Does no one else live here? Jungkook walked ahead and sat on the couch, leaning back with a sigh. Nope, I live alone. Wine frowned slightly. Alone? What about your parents? Jungkook shrugged. They live abroad for business, always traveling, barely home. His voice was casual, but there was something distant about it. Oh, she didn't know what else to say. She couldn't imagine living alone in such a huge place. It felt lonely. Before she could dwell on it, Jungkook suddenly stood up. You must be tired from college. Want something to drink? Wine blinked. Oh, no, it's fine. I didn't ask if you wanted. I said you must be tired. Wait here. Without giving her a chance to refuse, he disappeared into the kitchen. One sat awkwardly on the couch, feeling a little out of place. A few minutes later, Jungkook returned with 2 glasses of fresh juice and handed one to her. Here, drink. One hesitated before taking the glass. Thanks, she took a sip, surprised at the sweet, refreshing taste. Did you make this? Jungkook sat beside her, smirking. Why? Tastes bad? No, it's really good. She admitted, taking another sip. He chuckled, shaking his head. Good now, let's get to studying before you start reading my cooking skills too. Wine laughed lightly and nodded, placing her glass down before pulling out her books. 3 hours later, 8 p.m. One stretched her arms, letting out a small yawn. She glanced at the clock and widened her eyes. It's already night. I think I should go now. Jungkook, who had been lazily flipping through a notebook, immediately sat up. I will drop you home. Wine quickly shook her head. No, it's okay, really. His sharp gaze locked onto hers, no arguments. Wine bit her lip before signing in defeat. Fine. A victorious smirk appeared on his face as he grabbed his car keys. Jungkook pulled up in front of her small apartment building, his hands resting casually on the steering wheel. The contrast between their homes was undeniable. His grand mansion versus her modest apartment. Wine unbuckled her seatbelt and turned to him with a grateful smile. Thanks for the ride. Jungkook nodded, his gaze lingering on her. Just as she was about to step out, she hesitated. Do you want to come inside for a bit? Jungkook blinked, slightly surprised. Inside? Yeah, just for a while, since you live alone. I thought maybe you would like some company before heading back. For a brief moment, something flashed in Jungkook's eyes, something unreadable. Then he exhaled through his nose and smirked slightly. You are inviting me in, huh? One rolled her eyes. Forget it. I take back the offer. Jungkook chuckled and unbuckled his seatbelt. Too late. I'm coming in. One laughed softly as she led the way inside, and just like that, an unexpected evening took another turn. 1 week later, as Wine walked into the campus, her steps slowed when her eyes landed on Jungkook. He was standing near the entrance, laughing softly while talking to a girl. Her heart clenched. The girl, Mina, was smiling up at him, her hands slightly touching his arm as she spoke. Jungkook didn't seem to mind. In fact, he was smiling, a rare sight she only saw when he was amused by something. Why does it bother me so much? One shook her head, tearing her gaze away. She had no right to feel it this way. They were not anything more than tutor and student. Pushing down the uncomfortable feeling swirling in her chest, she walked past them, entering the building without saying a word. She needed to focus. One sat at her desk, flipping through her notes absent-mindedly. A familiar presence settled beside her, and a soft voice broke her thoughts. Hey, she looked up, meeting his warm brown eyes. Her irritation from earlier had not fully faded, but she managed a small nod. Hi. Jungkook leaned slightly closer, resting his arm on the desk. Did you solve the problems I asked about yesterday? One's fingers tightened around her pen. She knew she was being irrational, but she couldn't help the slight edge in her tone. Yeah, I will go over them with you after class. Jungkook raised a brow at her clipped response. You okay? Yeah, why wouldn't I be? She replied, looking away. Jungkook studied her for a moment but didn't push. Instead, he smirked slightly. All right, Miss Tutor, I will be waiting. From across the room, a pair of sharp eyes glared in their direction. Mina clenched her fists under the desk, her jaw tightening as she watched the direction. Not gonna leave you, she gritted her teeth. She had been watching them all week, one constantly by Jungkook's side, tutoring him, sitting with him, laughing with him, and Jungkook, he was actually letting her. Mina refused to accept it. She had liked Jungkook for years, and now some random girl was getting close to him. No, she wouldn't let it happen. After class in the washroom, Wine turned on the faucet, letting the cool water run over her hands. She sighed, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Why am I letting this affect me? Just as she was about to grab a tissue, the door swung open with a loud bang. She turned sharply only to see Mina storming in, her heels clicking against the tiled floor. Mina crossed her arms, her lips curling into a smirk. So, you think you are someone special, huh? Wine frowned. What are you talking about? Mina stepped closer, her eyes flashing with irritation. Don't act dumb. I have been watching you stick around Jungkook like some desperate girl all week. Wine tensed. I'm just tutoring him, that's it. Mina scoffed, rolling her eyes. Yeah, right. Do you really think he's interested in you, a girl like you? Her gaze flickered to Wine's simple clothes and a mocking smile formed on her lips. Poor, plain, and absolutely unworthy. Wine's fingers curled into fists. I don't need to prove anything to you, Mina. Mina's expression darkened. Without warning, she raised her hand. Wine stumbled slightly, her cheeks stinging from the slap. Shock and anger bubbled inside her as she touched her burning skin. Mina's voice was cold. Stay away from Jungkook. He's mine. Wine's breath catch. Yours. Mina smirked, stepping back. That's right. I'm his girlfriend, and I don't appreciate some low class girl like you clinging to him. Wine clenched her jaw, her heart pounding. She had no idea what kind of relationship Mina had with Jungkook. But one thing was clear, Mina wanted her gone, and one wasn't sure if she was ready to step away just yet. That night, Wine's apartment, Wine lay coiled upon her bed, her pillow damp with silent tears. Her phone buzzed for the fifth time. Chunk. She stared at the screen, her fingers trembling. He had been calling her nonstop, but she refused to answer. She couldn't. Her heart ached. She had not realized it before, but she had slowly started developing feelings for him. The way he smiled at her, the way he listened when she spoke, the way he always insisted on dropping her home. She had mistaken all of it for something special, but it was all a lie. Because he already had a girlfriend, a bitter laugh escaped her lips as she wiped her tears. How foolish of me to think I mean something to him. She made up her mind from now on she would ignore him. She had to protect her heart. As soon as Wine entered the classroom, she could feel his gaze burning into her. Jungkook was already at his seat, watching her intensely, waiting for her to look at him, but she didn't. Instead, she walked straight past him and sat at a different desk away from him. Jungkook frowned, his jaw clenched as he turned his body toward her. Wine, she pretended not to hear. His fingers tapped impatiently on the desk. Wine, still no response. Jungkook's brows furrowed in frustration. He had been trying to reach her since last night, and now she was ignoring him. What the hell was going on? His irritation only grew when Mina suddenly clung to his arm. Jungkook, Oppa, let's go get coffee together after class. Jungkook's mood soared instantly. His patience snapped. With a harsh jerk, he pushed Mina's hands off him. Don't touch me. Mina's face fell, but ignoring her completely, Jungkook stood up and stormed out of the class. He needed answers. One was walking toward the cafeteria, trying to distract herself, when suddenly a strong hand grabbed her wrist and yanked her into an empty classroom. Her heart pounded in fear as she turned about to scream until she saw him, Jungkook. His dark eyes were burning with frustration, his grip on her wrist firm yet gentle. Why the hell are you ignoring me? Wine avoided his gaze, trying to pull her wrist away. Let me go, Jungkook. But he didn't. Instead, he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming. Not until you tell me what's wrong. Wine swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. Nothing, just leave me alone. Jungkook let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. You're lying? You think I can't tell? She remained silent, refusing to look at him. His jaw clenched, and then, without warning, he grabbed her by the waist and crashed his lips onto hers. Wine's eyes widened in shock. Her mind went blank. The warmth of his lips, the intensity of the kiss, it was too much. She felt like her heart would burst. Jungkook pulled away slightly, his breathing heavy as his forehead rested against hers. His grip on her waist tightened. What was that? His eyes darkened. First, tell me why you were ignoring me. Tell me why. One bit her lip, debating whether to tell him, but the pain was too much to keep inside. Your girlfriend, to tell me. Jungkook's brow frowned. My what? Wine let out a bitter laugh, finally meeting his gaze. Don't act like you don't know. Mina, she slapped me and told me to stay away from you. She said she's your girlfriend. Jungkook froze and then his expression darkened, his entire aura shifting into something dangerous. His voice was sharp like a blade. My girlfriend, Why nodded instantly. She said you belong to her. Jungkook scoffed, running a frustrated hand through his hair. That crazy. He took a deep breath before looking at Wine again. His voice softened this time. I swear on my life I don't have a girlfriend. In fact, the only person I have fallen for you is you. Wine's breath hissed. What? Jungkook smirked slightly, tilting his head. Obviously, I fell for you, dumbass. Wine blinked in disbelief, but before she could say anything, Jungkook's expression turned cold again. Now come with me. Before she could react, he grabbed her wrist and stormed out of the room. It didn't take long to spot her in the hallway, laughing with a group of girls. Jungkook didn't hesitate. He marched straight up to her and a sharp slap echoed through the hallway. Gasps filled the air as Mina held her cheek in shock. Oppa! Jungkook's gaze was murderous. His voice was sharp and cold. From when were you my girlfriend? Mina stammered, looking around for support. I thought, who the hell gave you the right to touch my girl? He pulled Wine forward, his grip on her waist firm. Mina's eyes widened. Your girl? Jungkook's jaw tightened. Yeah, Wine is my girlfriend, and if you ever lay a finger on her again, you will regret it. Mina looked at Wine in disbelief, her face turning red with humiliation. Jungkook turned to Wine, his voice softer. Let's go. Wine, still in shock, nodded and let him lead her away, leaving Mina frozen in place. For the first time, Wine's heart felt light. She wasn't alone in her feelings. Jungkook had fallen for her too. Mina stood frozen, holding her stinging cheek, her face a mix of shock and humiliation. The entire hallway had gone silent, eyes watching the scene unfold. Jungkook gripped Wine's waist tightened protectively as he glared at Mina. His voice was calm but dangerously low, but Mina followed them. Now what? Oh yeah, I remember. Apologize. Mina's lips parted, her eyes flickering between him and Wine. What? Jungkook's jaw clenched, his voice turning sharper. I said apologize to Wine. Mina swallowed hard, her face turning red, but Jungkook, Oppa. Jungkook took a step forward, his presence intimidating. Don't Oppa me. His tone was laced with venom. You humiliated her, slapped her, and lied about being my girlfriend. You have 5 seconds to apologize before I make your life a living hell. The warning in his voice sent shivers down Mina's spine. She had never seen this side of him before. Her fists clenched as she looked at Wine, hatred burning in her eyes, but she had no choice. I'm sorry. Jungkook's expression remained cold, louder, and mean it. Mina inhaled sharply, swallowing her pride. I am sorry for slapping you and lying. Wine blinked slightly, taken aback. She had not expected him to go this far for her. Jungkook turned to Wine, his eyes softening. Did she apologize properly? Wine hesitated for a second before nodding. Yes. Jungkook smirked slightly before turning back to Mina. Good. Now, get out of my sight. Mina's face burned with humiliation as she turned and stormed away. The eyes of the students following her. Jungkook exhaled, then looked at Wine. His sharp expression melted into concern. Are you okay? Wine nodded, her heart still racing. You didn't have to do all that. Jungkook scoffed, stepping closer. Of course I did. No one lays a hand on you and gets away with it. His fingers brushed against her cheek as he searched her face. She really hit you? Wine hesitated before nodding. A dark expression flickered across his face, his jaw tightening. I should have hit her harder. Wine's eyes widened. Jungkook, his lips curled into a smirk. What? No one messes with my girl. Her face turned red at his words, making him chuckle. Come on, let's get out of here. Without another word, he took her hand and walked away, leaving the whispers and stirs of the crowd behind them. And for the first time, Wine didn't want to let go.